does want to. He doesn't know how to, and he doesn't have any basis for doing it. Given this, he will then have the basis. He'll call Mark Felt in, and the two of them, and Mark Felt wants to cooperate because he's ambitious. He'll call them in and say, we've gotten the signal across the river to put the hold on this. And that'll fit rather well because the FBI agents who are working the case at this point feel that's what it is a CIA. This is a hunt tool. That'll uncover a lot of legal scandals, a lot of things that we just feel that this would be very detrimental to have this thing going further. This involves the Cubans and a lot of hanky-panky that we have nothing to do with ourselves. What the hell did Mitchell know about this thing? I think so. I don't think he knew the details, but I think he did know how he handled it with Watergate and Texas and so forth. Well, who is the asshole that did it? Is it Liddy? Is that the fellow? He must be a little nuts. Yeah. I mean, he just isn't well screwed on, is he? The FBI interviewed Colson yesterday. They determined that would be a good thing to do. To have him take an interrogation, which he did. And that, the FBI guys working the case had concluded that there were one or two possibilities. One, that this was a White House. They don't think there's anything about the election committee. They think it was either a White House operation that had some obscure reasons for it, non-political, or was the Cubans and the CIA. And after their interrogation of Colson yesterday, they concluded it was not White House, so they're now convinced it's a CIA thing.
Trigger warning. Eject from this video right now if you are bothered by heterodox views on modern American presidential history. You've already had a good 5-second warning, now I'm giving you another 5 seconds so the host is satisfied that his due diligence is done. Now let's begin. Richard Milhous Nixon was a great man. Richard Milhous Nixon was a great American. Richard Milhous Nixon was the most popular, most wildly successful president in the lifetime of any American currently living. And his list of achievements reads like the wet dream of a 21st century Democrat. On the foreign policy front, he established normalized diplomatic relations with communist China. He established détente with the Soviet Union. He concluded history's first nuclear arms reduction treaty. He took U.S. combat troops out of Vietnam, and he ended the Yom Kippur War. On the domestic front, he established the Environmental Protection Agency. He expanded Social Security coverage. He established federal wage and price controls. And he implemented a revenue-sharing program whereby the central government, of its own volition, gives free money to state and local governments to use for whatever purposes they see fit. So why did the Washington establishment want so badly to destroy him by any means necessary? And why are they going to try and do the same thing again to President Donald Trump? Because make no mistake, that attempt is coming sooner than later. Well, stay tuned and I'll tell you. It's Wednesday, the 20th of August. This is Curmudgeon's Corner. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I have got a secret transcriptionist hiding behind the walls of my private chambers, and he has got an unlimited supply of ink and parchment. Good afternoon, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to Curmudgeon's Corner. Let's talk about the Washington establishment. Today's Washington establishment doesn't look all that much different from the Washington establishment of 50 years ago. Except there's a lot more blacks and women in it, and apparently we are supposed to view that as some sort of improvement, but is it really? Because in terms of its character and its predilections, nothing's really changed all that much. If you want to enter polite Washington society, if you want to be invited to all the most fashionable cocktail parties, if you want a fake news media golden parachute that permanently guarantees you a nice, tidy income no matter how corrupt and incompetent you might happen to be, well, the drill works pretty much still the same as it always did. You have to have an Ivy League degree, you have to have spent your whole professional life in either a government position or a government-adjacent position, and you have to be able to sing on command from any and every page of the Washington establishment hymnal. The D.C. establishment viewed Richard Nixon as a foreign contagion because he satisfied none of those requirements. They viewed Ronald Reagan as a foreign contagion because he, too, satisfied none of those requirements. And they view Donald Trump as a foreign contagion because he satisfies none of those requirements. Nixon won 2 presidential elections, arguably 3, but that's a topic for a separate video. by a combined electoral college score of 821 to 298. He won the popular votes in those two elections by a combined total of 87.95 million to 60.44 million, or if you prefer percentages, 56.6% to 43.4%. Neither of the elections was particularly close. In fact, the 1968 election was nearly a carbon copy of the Trump-Harris election of 2024 in terms of the electoral vote totals. And then the 1972 election was an especially big ass-kicking at 520 to 17, although Reagan did beat it just barely with his merciless beatdown of Walter Mondale 12 years later in 1984 by a score of 525 to 13. The only other candidate in the history of the Republic who ever exceeded 500 electoral votes, and the only Democrat to ever do it, was Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1936. And the Washington establishment, not just the Democrats, but the Republicans too, they don't like to talk about those numbers. In fact, they hate talking about it, because those numbers make them look like fools. Nixon was a California interloper, the son of a Yorba Linda grocer with a degree from Whittier College, of all places. They thought they'd got rid of him after he lost, allegedly, the 1960 presidential election and the 1962 California gubernatorial election. Then the bastard had the temerity to pick himself up off the deck and author the greatest political comeback in history. Did the East Coast GOP establishment want to give him the nomination in 1968? Hell no, they didn't. But the voters said otherwise. Reagan, too, was a California interloper with a degree from Eureka College? You're serious? A former Hollywood B-movie actor, of all things. Sure, he was a successful two-term governor, but come on. It's not like we're going to nominate a guy like that for the presidency, which they succeeded in not doing in 1976, even though he was clearly the choice of the people. They knew when 1980 rolled around that it was going to be impossible to keep him off the ticket this time, but in a backroom deal at the convention, they forced him to accept the establishment-approved George Bush the Elder as his running mate, as a condition of dropping their opposition, in the belief that, well, we will just ride out this temporary anomaly of populist conservatism, and once Reagan is safely back on the plane back to California, we can return the party leadership to the loving embrace of the globalist neoliberals, and we've already got a man waiting in the wings. And that's exactly the way it played out in the actual event. And if you think today's GOP establishment views Donald Trump any differently than they used to view Nixon and Reagan, you are setting yourself up for all manner of bitter disappointment. Because take my word for it, they very much do. You remember 2016? You remember all the histrionics the party engaged in trying to come up with some way, any way, to deny Trump the nomination, when it couldn't have been any more plain that he was the overwhelming choice of the voters. But today's GOP establishment isn't any different in character or temperament than their forebears were 40 or 50 years ago. They view the Make America Great Again movement as a temporary populist conservative anomaly, a thing that can be ridden out, and once Trump is safely off the political stage, then the party can go back to being the thing it wants to be, a collection of globalist, statist, elitist, Ivy League douchebags, whose version of conservatism means always being 10% less liberal than the liberals. If American conservatives were smart, would they have started arranging better representation for themselves like 30 years ago? Yes. But again, that's a topic for a separate video. So, let's get back to the things that are of immediate concern right now today. Trump is in the first half of the first year of his second term, and he has done it Grover Cleveland style, non-consecutively, but for the purposes of our present thought experiment, let's act like they are consecutive terms. That would mean Trump in August of 2025 is in the same stage of his presidency that Nixon was in August of 1973, which means the Watergate burglary was 14 months ago. The resignations of Haldeman, Ehrlichman, and Kleindienst were 4 months ago. 3 months ago, the House Watergate Committee was impaneled, and Archibald Cox was appointed the special prosecutor. 2 months ago, John Dean flips on the president and starts telling the committee basically anything it wants to hear. 1 month ago would have been the point where Spiro Agnew resigns as vice president and gets replaced by Jerry Ford. 2 months from now is the Saturday Night Massacre. 10 months from now is the date of my birth. 1 year from now, Nixon resigns the presidency. Did Nixon order the Watergate burglary? He did not. Had he ever met or heard of any of the Watergate burglars? He had not. Did he have any possible thing to lose by simply telling the truth up front and saying, no, I never met these idiots, I never heard of these idiots, and I sure as hell didn't order any damn cockamamie burglary? He did not. But after an entire life and career of priding himself on projecting an image of personal honor and propriety, He made one very wrong, very stupid choice, and in the process, he ruined himself and wrecked what should have been one of the greatest presidential legacies of all time. The reason why he made that choice, again, unpacking that would require a whole separate video. But I think there was a certain part of Nixon's psyche that told him, I have been elected president twice. I won 520 goddamn electoral votes in the last election. I am popular. I am successful. My approval numbers are through the roof. I've got a track record of bona fide achievements as long as your arm. And that should be all that matters, right? But that thinking caused him to drop his guard. He thought his enemies in the Democrat Party and the Republican Party and the fake news media couldn't touch him as long as he enjoyed the support of the American people and he kept delivering results both internationally and domestically. But he was mistaken, badly mistaken, in fact, in that assessment, because the Washington establishment, including the fake news media, hated him with the white-hot burning intensity of 1,000 suns. They would stop at nothing to destroy him, and no approval numbers, no track record of achievement would insulate him from their desire to bring him down. I bring this up today because I think second-term Donald Trump is in a similar position today that second-term Nixon was in the summer of '73. He is achieving great things for the American people on a near-daily basis. He is running circles around his enemies in the Washington establishment and the fake news media. But this will only strengthen their resolve to try and destroy him by any and all means at their disposal. When the Washington establishment resolves to destroy a man, they don't ever stop until the destruction is done. Will they be chastened by the fact that they already did 2 fake impeachments that both failed spectacularly? They will not. If the Democrats find a way to take the House next year, which really shouldn't be any sort of a possibility, but the Republicans seem to always find a way to screw the pooch in the midterm, will 2027 and 2028 be a non-stop impeach-a-palooza? You bet your ass it will. Will the governance of the country grind to a halt as the Democrats try to satiate their insatiable desire to bring the bad orange man down? Yes, it will. Will the length of his list of achievements make any difference? It will not. There will be some sort of attempt to Watergate Trump, make no mistake. Even if the Democrats fail to take the House or the Senate, there will still be such an attempt. So be aware and be vigilant, because the leopard doesn't change its spots. What lesson did the Washington establishment and the fake news media take away from Watergate? They learned that they have veto power over the identity of the president at all times. And if they decide to bring a president down, no matter how popular or successful that president is, they can do it, as long as they try hard enough for long enough. I'm done. That's all I've got. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Get off my lawn.